Cerberus narrations. Because who needs sleep anyway?
I think about this moment when he and I get in a disagreement and immediately stop being mad at him. The idea that I almost lost him and never would have known what happened is enough to calm even my most justified anger. This happened about 3 years ago. I was 24, he was 25. It had pretty much been just me and him since we were 17 and 18, so my whole world was almost snatched away. It was late at night. I'd just picked him up from work, and we'd stopped at a Harris Teeter for a bottle of wine and a pizza. A couple of details. I had both of our cell phones in my purse, because that's just how we did it when we were out together. He didn't like having it in his back pocket. Also, my husband is very pretty. I mean, he's handsome, but he's got long, curly black hair and a slight build, and we both look way younger than we are. It's made us targets for more than a few weirdos. So, we're in line about to pay, and he realizes he left his wallet in the car. The store is pretty much empty, and there was no one behind us, so he said, "I'll be right back," and ran out into the dark parking lot. Now, I'm anxious anyway, so when he was gone for literally 4 minutes, I ran outside to look for him. I saw a black trunk with a trunk cover on it, driving away under the single streetlight, and my husband nowhere in sight. My knees felt like jelly. I never understood that saying until that moment. I ran to our car, praying he was in there. Thank God he was. He was sitting in our locked car, staring after the truck until I, too loudly, smacked the passenger window. He looked at me with giant, terrified eyes. "Get in," he said, as he leaned over and unlocked my door, and yelled at me to lock it back when I sat down. He was shaking and freaking out and hugging me. I finally just squeezed him and said, "Baby, what the fuck happened?" He finally just said, "Give me my phone." And he called 911. So I heard the story as he was telling it to the operator, and it still makes me want to throw up when I think about it. He had walked out to the car and noticed the black truck a lane over. We both worked in stores in that shopping centre and had never been afraid of the parking lot, but luckily it sent up a red flag and he hurried. As he fumbled with the keys, no fob, he heard the truck start up and figured it was leaving. In the time it took for him to grab his wallet out of the seat and turn around, the truck was behind him, and a big man had opened the trunk. As the man turned around to face him, my husband just fell, sat back in our car, and slammed the door. The man didn't try the door right away. Instead, he hit the window in anger, and that's what saved my husband, because he managed in that moment to lock the doors. The man just stood there for a whole minute, looking around, and tried opening the door twice. Then, he paced for a few seconds, then went back to the front of his truck and dug around. This whole time, my husband sat in horror, without his phone, I wish he'd thought to honk the horn, or something to scare the guy, or get someone's attention, but he was too scared to think. Finally, the man just climbed in the truck and sat there until I guess he saw me running out of the store and zoomed off. The police arrived, and my husband gave a description of the truck and the man. Tall, white, and balding, dressed in all black, like a sweatsuit. The truck either didn't have a license plate, or he'd covered it. They didn't find him that we know of. We've since moved out of the state. So, that's how my husband was almost kidnapped. I stayed awake for nights, just holding him and feeling him breathe. I almost lost him. After the shock wore away, he became rather serious about working out, because the fact that he wouldn't have been able to fight the man off haunts him. Fuck that guy for making my husband a victim. On a rainy night, in the era before cell phones, I was 18, walking a very long way home from work, and I foolishly accepted a ride home from a strange man. I'm a small town girl, living in her lonely world, and I had just gotten off a double shift. He was elderly, acted genuinely concerned for me, and I saw a Bible in the back seat. Probably safe, right? The car was old and broken down, and he had to get out to open the door for me. It took him a while, as he had trouble walking with a bum leg. He told me the passenger door didn't open from the inside. I immediately felt weird, but years of nice girl training told me he's gone to so much trouble. Don't say no. We chatted for a while, and he politely complimented my uniform, my hair, and told me I looked like his late wife, and that her spirit must have led him to help get me home. It sounded very sweet the way he told it. The conversation turned to if I was still in school, what my hobbies were like, and gradually turned to whether or not I was on my period, which was rude, but he acted like it was going to be the punchline of a joke, so I laughingly asked him why he would want to know. He said, very calmly, because if you're fertile, we should start trying for a family right away. Oh, shit. He said that God had kept him lonely for years, but now, because I looked so much like his late wife, it was clear I was meant to be his, so he could start life over again, and finally have lots of children, like his wife was unable to do. He grabbed my hand and kissed it, and said, I can't wait to show you our new bed. I told him I forgot something at work. He told me I could get it tomorrow. I told him I needed to pee, and he said I could hold it until we got home. He wasn't going to let me out. He kept talking about how things were different back then, and how men are the head of the household, that women are to follow their fathers and then their husbands, and God says this and God says that. He talked about his wedding day, how his wife's father had given her to him. So, I blurted out, you're going to get my father's permission to marry me before taking me to your home, right? God would want that, right? You need to do that because otherwise we would be living in sin, and the marriage bed is not holy. I knew to say this, as I remembered it from many, many days of church sermons. He got offended then, and said he knew the Bible better than I did, and of course he knew to ask my father for permission. I told him that we couldn't live together in sin, and we should go to my house before going home, and I reminded him that the street wasn't far. Still trying to keep the conversation light and joking, I told him that's what a godly man would do, and he wholeheartedly agreed. Then we got to the street where I had previously told him I lived. He asked which house was my parents'. I gave him a fake house number far away from mine and had him drop me there. He wanted to come inside. I told him I needed to let my parents know about God sending me a husband before he could meet them. I said it would take a few days. Come back tomorrow. He said, I'll give you a few minutes, but then we need to be on our way. I told him to drive around the block so I could have time to pack my clothes. He nodded and finally opened the car door. I ran to that house's door, waved to him until he drove away, and then sprinted to my house where I lived alone, double bolted my door, and put the couch in front of it that night. Never saw him again. I did not call the police, though I wish I had. I moved in with my boyfriend a few days later, and I insisted on waiting at work until he could pick me up every night. I have a story that I was only partially there for, but my ex-girlfriend was present for the latter half. So, this was when I was much younger, in college. I'm sure you could find this, as it was in the news, local RI news. I was dating a girl that went to school in Providence, RI. It was the summer, and everyone was back home. My girlfriend's best friend had an internship back in Providence, and this girl had a 4-bedroom, multi-family home to herself. The other 3 roommates were paying for their rooms but chose to stay home. I guess they could only get this place if they started paying rent 2 to 3 months prior to the school year starting. But whatever. One weekend, my girlfriend asked me to go to Providence with her to spend time with her friend. She is lonely and has nothing to do on the weekends. We are only like an hour away from Providence, so it sounds like a plan. We head down and we just chill for the night, drink, and do some cocaine. It's about 2 a.m, and we decide to walk out and get some cigs. Nothing special. We walk by a guy on our way home from the gas station who is just staring at us. Kind of creepy, but no big deal, as it's 2 a.m. in Providence, and her house wasn't located in the best of areas, but certainly not the worst. We eventually all pass out, and me and my girlfriend head home the next day. The end of the week comes, and my girlfriend asks if I want to go to Providence again, but I can't, as I have to work all weekend, so I decline. She heads down there, and her friend's boyfriend is coming to stay over. Pretty much a repeat of the weekend before. They all drink, but end up going out and partying a little bit. They are walking back after a night of drinking when they enter the mudroom around 2 a.m. They close the mudroom door behind them, which was left unlocked, and there's a dude, really raggedy looking in there, waiting for them. He says out loud to them, "Get in the fucking house." They all turn around, and he has a gun. My girlfriend's friend has already unlocked the door to the house, and it's partially opened. Everyone is frozen in place, and the guy repeats himself, "Get in the fucking house." The boyfriend then steps forward with his hands up a little bit, as to not seem confrontational, and says, "Hey man, calm down. It's all good." I don't know how the fuck this dude was brave enough to do any of this, but as he says that, the dude shoots him. My girlfriend and her friend run into the house and hide under a bed. They can't hear this, but the assailant took off and didn't follow them back in. They don't know this though, and are terrified, hiding under a bed while the boyfriend is screaming for help. They think the psycho has come into the house and is looking for them. My girlfriend told me they were both silently crying under the bed while the boyfriend screamed for help. And this is the worst part, yelling out, "Help me, I'm dying." The neighbours heard the gunshot and screaming and called the police. They ended up catching the man. He had been watching the girls for weeks. It was the guy we had seen watching us the week prior. The worst part was, the girl's boyfriend ended up dying.